Welcome back, brilliant minds across the continent and beyond. Whether you're a returning supporter or joining us for the very first time, welcome. This is your home for fearless, African-centered storytelling and unapologetic truth. Before we dive in, do us a quick favor, like this video, share it widely, and smash that subscribe button so you never miss a beat of what's really happening from Africa's perspective. If you'd like to support our work directly, feel free to use the Super Thanks feature right below the video. Your contribution helps keep independent, Pan-African journalism alive. We encourage you to leave your thoughtful, respectful comments. We read them, we value them, and sometimes we feature them. So, speak up. Disclaimer, everything discussed in this video is for educational and informational purposes only, based on publicly available statements, policies, and commentary. We are committed to truth, not misinformation, and this video complies fully with YouTube's guidelines. Let's get into it. A new wave of global controversy has erupted, and once again, Africa is at the center of it. US President Donald Trump has rolled out a fresh travel ban that directly impacts 43 countries worldwide, and nearly half of them are African. That's right, 22 African nations now find themselves listed under sweeping US travel restrictions. And while the headlines scream security concerns, many across the globe are asking a different question. Is this truly about safety, or is it something deeper? Something racial, something systemic?
The recent terror attack in Boulder, Colorado has underscored the extreme dangers posed to our country by the entry of foreign nationals who are not properly vetted, as well as those who come here as temporary visitors and overstay their visas. We don't want them. In the 21st century, we've seen one terror attack after another carried out by foreign visa overstayers from dangerous places all over the world. And thanks to Biden's open door policies, today there are millions and millions of these illegals who should not be in our country. In my first term, my powerful travel restrictions were one of our most successful policies, and they were a key part of preventing major foreign terror attacks on American soil. We will not let what happened in Europe happen to America. That's why on my first day back in office, I directed the Secretary of State to perform a security review of high-risk regions and make recommendations for where restrictions should be imposed. Among the national security threats their analysis considered are the large-scale presence of terrorists, failure to cooperate on visa security, inability to verify travelers' identities, inadequate record-keeping of criminal histories, and persistently high rates of illegal visa overstays, and other things. Very simply, we cannot have open migration from any country where we cannot safely and reliably vet and screen those who seek to enter the United States. That is why today I am signing a new executive order placing travel restrictions on countries including Yemen, Somalia, Haiti, Libya, and numerous others. The strength of the restrictions we're applying depends on the severity of the threat posed. The list is subject to revision based on whether material improvements are made, and likewise new countries can be added as threats emerge around the world. But we will not allow people to enter our country who wish to do us harm, and nothing will stop us from keeping America.
But rather than just reacting, today we're choosing to reflect. Because buried within this controversial policy lies some sobering truths and valuable lessons for Africa. Let's unpack it. Trump, in a fiery announcement, stated that recent acts of terror in the United States are tied to foreign nationals who either weren't properly vetted or overstayed their visas. He blames open-door policies for letting millions of undocumented individuals flood in, and claims that his first-term travel bans were a major success in stopping attacks. He's back at it, signing a new executive order targeting what he calls high-risk regions. The criteria? Alleged terrorism ties, lack of cooperation with U.S. security, poor record-keeping, difficulty verifying identities, high rates of visa overstays. And based on that list, Africa took a hit. Before we go further, let us know in the comments, where are you watching this from? Let's show just how far our Pan-African community reaches. Now, here's how the new system breaks down. On the red list, we have Libya, Somalia, Sudan. Citizens from these nations are banned outright. No tourist visas. No student visas. No immigrant visas. Nothing. If you're from any of these countries, your entry into the US, for now, is completely blocked. On the orange list, things are only slightly better. Countries here face severe visa restrictions and must undergo enhanced screening procedures. Sierra Leone, South Sudan. Applicants from these nations face extreme vetting, and in many cases, their travel will still be denied. And then comes the yellow list, a 60-day warning zone. If these governments don't tighten up their security protocols within 2 months, they risk being bumped up to the red or orange list. African nations in this category include Burkina Faso, Angola, Benin, Cameroon, Republic of the Congo, Democratic Republic of the Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Gambia, Liberia, Malawi, Mauritania, Zimbabwe. That's 22 African countries. 22 flags dimmed on the international stage. Out of 54 total nations on the continent, that's a staggering percentage. Let that sink in. Now, if you're in the US, you may look at this as a bold move to put your country first. But if you're watching from Africa, you're probably wondering, what did Togo do? What did Chad do? Why is half the continent suddenly viewed as a security risk? Let's be honest. Trump's explanation ticks all the typical boxes: terror threats, unvetted migrants, weak documentation. And some might even say these concerns are valid. After all, how many African countries have fully functional identity systems? How secure are our borders, really? How much cooperation exists between African states and international security bodies? Still, this policy feels heavy-handed and for many, hypocritical. Across the internet, reactions have been explosive. One legal analyst described it as prejudice in the form of policy. He reminded the world that this is eerily similar to previous bans that disproportionately targeted Black, brown, and Muslim-majority countries. Another commenter slammed the hypocrisy, pointing out that some Somali migrants in the US are accused of traveling back to the very country they once claimed to have fled, all while collecting benefits from the American system. Others, with a more cynical tone, admitted they'd never even heard of places like Eritrea or Equatorial Guinea until this list dropped. That says something about how invisible many African nations still are on the global map, until they're being blacklisted. And then a comment that cut deep: don't claim you banned dangerous countries. Admit you banned poor ones. Hard to ignore, because some of these nations, despite their economic challenges, have never posed an actual threat to the US. Their real crime? Poverty, instability, a passport that doesn't carry enough weight. And therein lies a painful truth for Africa. Friends, if you're finding this conversation powerful, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and share this video with someone who still believes Africa doesn't need to change. Because we do, urgently. So, what can Africa take from this? A wake-up call. Migration isn't just a political issue, it's a development issue. When our people flee to chase foreign dreams, it's often because our leaders have failed to build local ones. Governments glamorize diaspora jobs, but ignore the reason youth want to leave in the first place: unemployment, insecurity, and a lack of dignity. We talk about value addition in agriculture, but we're still exporting raw beans and raw minerals only to import them back, processed and overpriced. We cry foul over our youth leaving for tech jobs in the West, yet our own governments are still sleeping on tech investment. Africa is the youngest continent, yet we treat our youth like an afterthought. And let's not even start on our education systems, which in many countries are stuck in the past, teaching skills that don't match our current, let alone future, realities. Meanwhile, our passport power is weak. An African passport often opens fewer doors than any other in the world. We line up for visas. We get interrogated. We over-explain. We overprove ourselves. And this ban just underscores how insignificant African geopolitical leverage still is. It's also a huge indictment of our security infrastructure. Many African countries have no clear vetting systems, unreliable databases, and porous borders. IDs can be bought. Records can be forged. Documents go unchecked. When a Western nation calls us a security risk, sometimes they're not entirely wrong. But this is where the Pan-African message must ring loud. If 22 of our 54 nations are flagged, that's not a US problem. That's an African problem. And here's where it gets even more frustrating. Africa never responds collectively. When the West makes a move that affects the continent, we negotiate individually. Kenya speaks as Kenya. South Africa speaks as South Africa. Togo speaks alone. Meanwhile, our neighbors are targeted, and we stay silent. Where is the unified African voice? Where is our continental backbone? We shout Pan-Africanism from rooftops until real Pan-Africanism is needed. Then we go quiet. We go solo. It's high time Africa redefines what solidarity actually means, not as a slogan for summits, but as a strategy for survival. When one African nation is blacklisted, every other should feel the sting. If we're not willing to stand together, we will continue to fall one by one, quietly, invisibly, and without recourse. And speaking of standing, let's talk about dignity, or the loss of it, in constantly seeking validation from the very powers that sideline us. Why do we always look to the West for a stamp of approval? Why is the African identity so fragile that a travel ban feels like an existential blow? We must stop outsourcing our sense of worth. Build institutions that speak for themselves. Craft economies that prioritize value, not volume. Train a generation of thinkers and makers who won't have to flee for opportunity because they'll find it here at home. It's time to tell our stories ourselves. Not just react when someone else does it poorly. We have the numbers. We have the youth. We have the resources. We have the culture. But what we do not yet have, and desperately need, is unity, purpose, and resolve. And let's be honest, it's humiliating that countries like Chad, which has been a key US counterterrorism ally in the Sahel, now finds itself on the same list as nations accused of harboring instability. If even our most strategic partners are treated this way, what does that say about Africa's global position? Who is going to speak for Chad? And that's the question that echoes across this entire list. Who will speak for Africa? This isn't about defending injustice. It's about defining ourselves. So, if you are still with us and this message resonates with your spirit, do something simple but powerful. Subscribe, like, and share this message with a brother, a sister, a neighbor. Because awareness precedes action, and action is long overdue. And to our African leaders, especially those who've grown comfortable basking in foreign applause while ignoring domestic crisis, this is your moment. Wake up, reimagine, reform. Stop blaming colonial history while practicing neo-colonial thinking. Stop exporting talent and importing excuses. Fix the systems, build the structures, trust your people, and stop watching them drown in paperwork and poverty just to chase a future elsewhere. Because if we don't start building the African dream, the world will keep reminding us, in no uncertain terms, that we don't belong in theirs. Now let's talk security and governance. Donald Trump pointed fingers, claiming that many of these African countries are unable to reliably vet travelers, track criminal histories, or share intelligence. That hurts. But if we're honest, it's also an indictment we can't dismiss outright. Because how many African nations have national databases that are clean, secure, and trustworthy? In far too many places, it's still possible to buy a passport, forge an ID, or fake travel documents with minimal effort. And that's not just a problem for the West, that's a problem for us. Because security is not a favor we do for outsiders. It's a duty we owe ourselves. We've outsourced so many of our own responsibilities that now we're surprised when the global community doesn't trust us. But trust is earned, with consistency, with transparency, and with systems that actually work. So, let this moment not be one of outrage. Let it be a mirror. Africa, look closely. What do you see? We must stop relying on external countries to tell us what our security standards should be. We have the talent. We have the tools. What we've been lacking is political will, and sometimes, the courage to break away from legacy systems that no longer serve us. Let this be the turning point. Now, something else needs to be said. Global validation is fragile. It's time to stop catching feelings every time a Western nation refuses us entry. The question we should be asking isn't, why won't they let us in? But rather, why aren't we building something powerful enough that we don't need to go? Because the most powerful nations don't beg to be included. They create gravity. They draw others in. Africa, it's time to build gravity. Let's invest in our youth. Let's turn our universities into powerhouses of innovation. Let's stop exporting raw goods for pennies, and instead start exporting finished products, technologies, and ideas. And let's do all this with unity. We cannot afford another 10 years of fragmented diplomacy, isolated reforms, and Pan-Africanism only in theory. Because while we remain divided, others continue to write our narrative, and now, ban us from their borders. And yes, the narrative matters. It matters when millions of young Africans are growing up believing that the only way out of poverty or insecurity is a plane ticket to the West. That's not aspiration, that's desperation. We cannot celebrate when thousands of skilled African doctors, engineers, nurses, and tech experts are leaving the continent every year, not to serve Africa, but to fill the gaps in Western systems. We call it success, but they call it brain drain, and they're winning. And even when we go, we rarely go with dignity. Most African professionals abroad are separated from their families. Many are underemployed. Others are overqualified and underpaid. And yet, they stay, because home still doesn't feel like a future. For what? Why should Africa, the most resource-rich continent on Earth, fail to offer its children a future? It's not a curse. It's a failure of leadership, vision, and collective responsibility. We must stop treating migration as a badge of honor, and instead treat nation-building as a sacred mission. We must stop glamorizing foreign visas and start respecting African passports by building the kind of systems and standards that earn global respect, not suspicion. We must stop letting outsiders define our story. Because if we leave the pen in their hands, don't be surprised when every chapter starts with terrorism, poverty, or risk. So to all Africans watching this right now, wherever you are, this is not a moment to complain. It's a moment to reclaim. Reclaim your identity. Reclaim your power. Reclaim your responsibility to shape what Africa becomes in the next 10, 20, or 50 years. And let's not pretend this is someone else's job. It's not just about presidents, ministers, or diplomats. This is about all of us. Every young entrepreneur building something out of nothing. Every teacher showing kids they matter. Every farmer adding value instead of exporting raw. Every tech innovator solving local problems with global thinking. Every activist holding leaders accountable. This is nation building, and it starts from the ground up, not from foreign embassies or global handouts. We cannot keep outsourcing our future. We cannot keep waiting for IMF bailouts, donor conferences, or diaspora remittances to keep us alive. Because one day, the world will stop giving, and if we haven't learned how to stand on our own, we will collapse. What we need now is clarity, courage, and commitment. Clarity to know what the real issues are. Courage to face them without excuses. And commitment to fix them, no matter how long it takes. We talk about Africa's potential like it's some distant dream, as though it's always 20 years away. But potential is nothing without preparation, without strategy, without action, and without unity. The reason we're being embarrassed left, right, and center on the global stage is not because we lack greatness. It's because we haven't organized our greatness. We haven't coordinated it. Look at the US military presence in Africa. Look at how easily foreign drones fly through our airspace. Look at how much of our natural wealth is still mined, extracted, and exported by corporations that don't even pay fair taxes. Then look at how hard it is for an African entrepreneur to expand a business across even 5 countries on this continent without being buried in bureaucracy. Do you see the contradiction? Others can navigate Africa easier than Africans can. Let that sink in. We get excited when international media recognizes us, when a Western celebrity visits our cities, when our artists break into foreign markets. But we don't invest enough in our own creative ecosystems, our own voices, our own platforms. We don't tell our stories enough. We don't amplify our wins. We don't protect our image. And when someone else paints a picture of Africa as poor, broken, or dangerous, we react with outrage instead of offering a stronger, undeniable counter-narrative. It's not enough to say, Africa is not what they show on TV. We must show them something different. We must show the world what we really are. To do that, we must build stronger regional coalitions, strengthen our institutions, protect our journalists, educate our children for the real world, and elect leaders who do more than promise, leaders who deliver. And yes, we need continental solidarity. Because if we don't have each other, we won't have anything. And we won't have anyone. When 22 countries get placed on a travel ban list, the African Union should speak. When an ally like Chad is banned despite its counterterrorism efforts, Africa should push back. When African passports are treated like red flags, we should not just complain, we should reform. We have the AU. We have ECOWAS. We have SADC. We have IGD. We have the bodies, but where is the backbone? Let's be clear, what Donald Trump did may be within his rights as a sovereign leader, he's protecting his country. The real question is, when will Africa start protecting its own interests with equal force and urgency? Because if we don't, if we remain silent, disjointed, and reactionary, this won't be the last list we appear on. It will just be another chapter in a long, tired story of Africa being seen, but never truly heard. Let's be brutally honest, no one is coming to save Africa. Not the West. Not China. Not the UN. Not the aid agencies. Not even the diaspora. At least, not alone. Because Africa doesn't need saviors. Africa needs systems. Africa needs leaders who act like servants, not kings. Africa needs citizens who see voting not as an event, but as a duty, one that affects generations. Africa needs a new class of thinkers, people who design solutions for African problems with African resources for African people. We can't keep sending our brightest minds overseas and calling it success. It's not success when our hospitals lose their best doctors, when our research centers go empty, when our innovation hubs are underfunded and overlooked. We call it diaspora pride. But it's really developmental poverty. Because if Africa were a startup, we'd be bleeding talent faster than we could ever hope to scale. So now is the time to stop outsourcing our ambitions. Now is the time to water our own soil. We've seen what happens when we don't. We get banned. We get ignored. We get reduced to statistics in a policy document designed by people who don't even know where our countries are on the map. And still, we beg to be accepted. That cycle must end. So what is the alternative? It's not rage. It's not nationalism. It's deliberate, intentional, coordinated progress. It means finally putting our youth at the center of every national plan. Not just as voters or volunteers, but as partners, innovators, and drivers of change. It means funding African startups, African media, African technology, and African agriculture, so our future is not just dependent on how many foreign investors show up at a summit once a year. It means enforcing transparency, fighting corruption, and building digital systems that actually track who we are, what we own, and what we're building, so no one else defines our value again. And yes, it means being honest about our weaknesses. Because there is no healing without honesty. When Donald Trump says some African countries can't vet travelers properly, that's not an insult. That's a challenge. A challenge to build systems where no fake passport, no ghost ID, no security loophole survives. When they say we don't share intelligence, let's build a continental framework that makes security cooperation standard, not optional. And when our citizens are treated as suspect just for holding an African passport, let our response not just be diplomatic letters. Let our response be reform. Let it be excellence. Let it be so undeniable that no country can blacklist Africa without questioning their own credibility. That's the Africa we must build, not just for ourselves, but for the generations behind us who deserve to inherit a continent worthy of their dreams. So if this message stirs something in you, don't let it pass. Subscribe to this channel. Like this video so it reaches others who need to hear it. Share it with someone who still believes change is possible, because it is. But only if we choose it. Only if we fight for it. Only if we build it. Africa, the world is watching. The question is, what are we going to show them next? And while we reflect, we must also reclaim our narrative. Too often, Africa is spoken about, rarely spoken to, and even more rarely speaking for itself. The dominant headlines are always the same: crisis, corruption, conflict. But these are not the only stories unfolding on this continent. We are more than the sum of our struggles. We are the home of startups rewriting the future of fintech, young minds reshaping education, farmers leading in regenerative agriculture, artists redefining global culture, and leaders, yes, a few, who are actually making bold, people-first decisions. But those stories don't go viral. They don't trend. They don't get featured in the international briefings that determine whether we end up on a travel ban or investment watch list. Because we haven't made it a priority to broadcast Africa's excellence with the same energy we use to criticize its failures. And that has to change. If you're watching this, you are part of the change. You are part of the community that believes Africa should not just exist. It should thrive, lead, and inspire. And it starts by changing what we expect of ourselves. Let me be clear, this is not about defending broken systems or downplaying injustice. It's not about pretending everything is fine when it clearly isn't. It's about choosing to fight forward. It's about recognizing that the only way to earn global respect is to start respecting ourselves, our institutions, our people, and our purpose. So when you hear another African country has been banned or blacklisted, don't just ask, why us? Ask, what are we going to do differently? When our youths risk drowning in the Mediterranean or being stranded at foreign airports, don't just blame the traffickers. Ask, what opportunities did we fail to give them at home? When foreign policy turns against us, let's not only react on Twitter. Let's build our own foreign policy frameworks. Let's back African embassies with real negotiation power and build continental media that challenges stereotypes with data and dignity. And when we speak of Pan-Africanism, let it be more than conference slogans and flag-waving ceremonies. Let it be a shared economic strategy, a shared security agenda, a shared immigration policy, a shared vision of what Africa can and must become. We've waited long enough. We've hoped long enough. Now is the time to act, not for pity, not for applause, but because we owe it to ourselves. This moment, uncomfortable as it is, may be one of Africa's greatest opportunities. A chance to step back, step up, and step forward into a new kind of power, not one handed to us, but one we built with our own hands from our own soil. So where does this all leave us? With 22 African nations effectively blacklisted by a global superpower, with the integrity of our passports questioned, with our youth still dreaming of escape more than return, where do we go from here? We go inward. We go deeper. We go together. Because this isn't just about a travel ban. This is about a mirror being held up to our continent, and we must decide whether to look away in shame or to face it with courage. Yes, the world may doubt us. Yes, they may block us. Yes, they may blacklist our names. But they can never cancel our spirit. We are Africa, 54 nations over 1 billion strong. The youngest population on Earth. The richest in culture, potential, and untapped brilliance. We've endured. We've resisted. We've rebuilt before. And we will rise again. Not through handouts, not through hashtags, but through unity, vision, and the relentless work of building something that cannot be ignored. So if this message has moved you, even a little, don't let it end with just a view. Join the movement. Subscribe to this channel, not because it's a channel, but because it's a platform for African truth. Leave a comment. Share your thoughts, your frustrations, your hopes. Like this video, let it rise through the algorithm, let more people feel what you just felt. Share it with your brother, your cousin, your WhatsApp group, your Facebook feed. Remind them that Africa is still ours to build. And if you believe in the power of independent African voices, consider clicking that super thanks button. Your support keeps this message alive and fuels the fire of fearless storytelling. Because at the end of the day, we're not just building a channel here. We're building a continent that speaks for itself, a people that rise for themselves, and a dream that belongs, finally, to us. This is a calling. Thank you for watching. I'll see you right here, tomorrow, next week, and every time we rise to tell the African story like no one else will. Stay proud, stay awake, and stay building.